Hello, 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 beautiful unicorns. How are you all doing today on this amazing Tuesday? Yana Kasperczak coming to you live from Ontario in Canada with lovely weather. Let me know how the weather is where you are and also where you're tuning in from, and if you're watching live or on replay. And as your spiritual awakening core energy coach, mindset coach, it has been my soul's purpose helping you, helping women to get their shit together so they can break free from the mental prison they find themselves in and build a life and a business that they're not only proud of but excited to wake up to every single day without fail, and show up for themselves and do the things that they love and enjoy and feel fulfilled in life. So to help women do that, on Tuesdays I like to do story time with myself, Yana Kasperczak, and I have been gearing up to this point with just, how do I put it? I've been collecting and gathering stories from women that I have worked with, in the way that they would describe what they have been going through, how they've been going through things in the short form, because I'm not looking for a long book here to read out to each and every one of you. So today I do have a story to share with you from one of the women that I had worked with, and I actually want to hear from each and every one of you as well. You know, as a spiritual awakening coach, I would imagine that those of you who are listening and watching to my videos and my podcasts, that you too are going through spiritual awakening, or just starting to recognize that you have been spiritually awakening, and you know that whatever it is that you want in life is not outside of you, it's inside of you, and all of the things that you actually want, they are emotional. They're all emotions. Here's how I'll put it. If you want your first house and you've never had a house before, there is some story, some fantasy that you have in your mind of what having your first house will feel like, what your life would be like, what you would experience, what you would get to do, what you would get to have, and most importantly, how you will feel. And then when you finally get that first house, little by little, you start to recognize that is not exactly how I imagined it. There's some things that are the same, emotionally speaking. Certain emotionally you want it are there, while others are not. So, without further ado, the story I want to share with you, I'm not going to give away any names because all of these things are kept private. Some of you, like I said, might relate to this, and I do want to hear from you about an experience that you've had when you started to recognize that you were awakening spiritually, that your spirit was awakening. Hey Rebecca, how are you doing, beautiful? Rebecca says you're looking radiant today. Hashtag live. Oh, thank you. Radiance is my middle name. No, I'm joking. So using these story times as actually telling you stories. So here goes the story. As I embarked on a journey of motherhood, I immersed myself in books, craving knowledge like never before. But motherhood had other plans. It taught me the art of letting go, relinquish control over the experiences and outcome. This surrender, I soon learned, was the ultimate lesson in parenthood. In the midst of my fertility struggles and eventual pregnancy, I delved deeper into my research. I stumbled upon the profound initiation experiences of indigenous cultures where men undergo rituals to mark their transition into adulthood. But what struck me was how women, through pregnancy and childbirth, naturally undergo a transformative initiation, a journey of physical and emotional endurance unparalleled in men. This revelation awakened me to the inherent power of being a woman, a power I had never fully appreciated growing up. Instead, I was conditioned to view my body as a burden, taught to fear its natural cycles and capabilities. But through the journey of motherhood, I discovered a newfound reverence for the vessel that carries life, the female body. Now, as a mother to a daughter, I am committed. Let me try to move the story so I can see it better. Now, as a mother to a daughter, I am committed to instilling in her a deeper respect and admiration for her own body and womanhood. Motherhood, I realize, is not a time to forget ourselves, but an opportunity to step into our highest power, to embrace the entirely of who we are. Our culture may tell us that once baby arrives, we no longer matter, but I refuse to subscribe to that narrative. Motherhood has birthed not only a child, but also a mother, one who is ready to lean into the challenges and embrace her whole self. In the courageous choice lies the true initiation of the mother. So with this story, I would love to hear, how familiar does it sound? How relatable does it sound? You going through initiation process as a mother, as a woman who was pregnant and now becomes a mother, where you are now diving into your spiritual self, where you're connected to the infinite, as I would call it, to where all souls go and live and reside and wait to be brought into this world. And the only way that a soul can be brought into this world is through a female body. Just pause and think about that for a second. How you are connected to the infinite, to the universe, to the place where no one knows what it is, but where souls go, and then they come through your womb. And then for man, and this is one of the things that I had been having a conversation with my daughter about, right, as a mother to a daughter, that this is why our womb is called sacred, because it is connected to the infinite. And there's a lot more depth to it, but I'm just going to keep it on the surface, keeping it short and sweet. You can go and do some research and see and understand in your own ways of what that means to you. But whatever it is, or whoever it is that you let into your womb, there are going to be traces left of their traumas and their experiences in one way or another. And yeah, anyways, that's not the conversation that I wanted to have here, but I felt like just planting a little bit of a seed to help you see, because I've also worked with women who have had many partners, and they've gone through quite a bit of trauma and they've lost themselves in that process. And this is not even them having any kids, just women who have been with a lot of different partners. And some of the traumas that they took on weren't necessarily theirs. And there's an emotional and energetic exchange as well. It's like you have a plug that you put into outlet, and you get the power from the outlet, right? The plug gets the power from the outlet and gets recharged. Now, some things might be left behind, right? Anyways, so with this story of recognizing, because the biggest part that stands out of the story that she was focusing on sharing is that motherhood itself is initiation process that we all go through as mothers, as women, that lead us into awakening our spirit. And how I would connect to this is, some of you know, some of you don't know. And if you don't know, you'll know now. When I was 22 years old, me and my husband, we're just 11 days apart. Same month, same year, 11 days apart. So when we were 22 years old, we got pregnant. Our first pregnancy, we just moved into our new house, and it's like, okay, let's go. Let's have a child now. And we got pregnant with identical twins, which took some time to know that we were having identical twins, but I was growing really quickly. My belly was growing really quickly, and I was losing weight. I wasn't gaining weight. I had no appetite. Everything just, almost, my hormones were like skyrocketing. Long story short, I ended up in the hospital in emergency because I was bleeding a lot, and we spent hours there. Just because healthcare is free in Canada does not mean it's good healthcare. So I sat there in the emergency room with my husband. Luckily, I wasn't bleeding anymore. It just came into 2 gushes of blood, and literally like a water bottle of blood ended up coming out of me. And long story short, by 3 a.m., and we went to the emergency at 8 p.m. So by 3 a.m., I was finally seen, just to be told that there's nothing they can do. And another long story short, next day we found out through having the scan that we were having twins. And that, it feels like it wasn't even that long afterwards that we ended up losing them. At 22 weeks of pregnancy, which was 5 months, we ended up losing the twins. And this is where I can tell you, it took me 15 years to be, at this point, I would say practically fully healed, or almost fully healed, because there's always going to be a little bit of, sadness. When you really think about it and focus on it, you will feel it. But I'm able to look at their pictures, and I had looked at their pictures with a smile on my face and no tears in my eyes, with just gratitude and understanding that that was my initiation into awakening my spirit. And I was only 22 years old. So at 22, there is no rational thinking, not very much rational thinking, where you're still kind of going with the flow. But at 27, this is where you pretty much, like 27, 28, you switch into more rational thinking, and you start to, I guess in the way you kind of go back to how you were young, you start to question things, and you start to feel the feelings and emotions in a different way in your body. And it can cause you aches and pains within your body as well, because at this point we're not taught in schools how to deal with any of this stuff, how to understand ourselves, how to understand our energy, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. There's no classes on that, no meditation, no calming the system down. We're not even taught the basics of human existence, which is breath. And it's mind-boggling. It really is, if you pause and think about how the very thing that is a gift, breath, that you need to go on your own and learn how to breathe properly. And one of the reasons why so many people are living with anxiety is because they haven't mastered the art of breath. Because most people in this day and age, including myself, have a sedentary job where they're sitting down. When you're sitting down, your diaphragm is restricted, which means that you can't take a full breath into your belly. You only take it into your diaphragm, into your chest. And it's important to have deep, full belly breaths. So anxiety is also, yes, it is unhealed grief, but it's also a practice of breath, that you might be holding your breath You might be tense in your body. Your breath might be shallow. So check your breath first. Check your system. So my initiation process started in that way. With this woman, for her, it was infertility and going through infertility issues. Some of you might have gone through that, and some of you haven't. Those of you who have gone through that, you will find this story very relatable, because you know what it's like to go through that. I personally can understand, but I can't fully relate, because the only way we can fully relate is if we have gone through it and experienced it ourselves firsthand. We need firsthand experience, and then we can fully understand. Another way of looking at it, when you worked at a corporate job, let's say it was your first job, let's say it was McDonald's, right? You worked at McDonald's and you worked cash and you worked in the back, cook, making the burgers. You did those things. But then you have the owner or the CEO of McDonald's come in and tell you how to do your job, when he or she has never ever done it himself. They just bought the thing and continued living their lavish lifestyle, never having to work at the front, never having worked with customers firsthand, worked on the back, or let's say, like myself, you worked at the bank and you have some big Joe Schmo coming in and telling you how to do your job when they have never worked your job a day in their life. It's kind of like that, where if you don't have the first-hand experience, you don't know what it's like, you haven't practiced it, you haven't experienced it yourself, then you can't really fully talk about it. If you are dealing with depression, right, going where the soul, your body, is going through deep rest, and it's because it's so tired of playing all these different roles, and it no longer wants to play along. It's just forcing you into the deep rest, so that way you can uncover yourself and discover who you truly are, and then be faced with a choice. Do I live life on my terms and follow who I truly am, authentically am, or do I go back to being a good, obedient girl and play all the roles that everybody else wants me to play? So if you have gone through depression or are going through depression, you would feel most comfortable working with someone who have gone through it themselves and essentially can lead the way from the beginning to the end, and not someone who has read a bunch of books and is very book intelligent or book smart, and then trying to tell you without fully understanding the emotions and the energy that are involved when one is going through the deep rest. And this is where the awakening of the soul usually takes place, that they're trying to tell you what to do and how to do it without fully understanding you and your experience. And that's why, working with this lady, and she knew that I can't help with that area, but I can help on the emotional level of knowing what it's like to lose a child that never had the opportunity to be part of this plane of this life. So anyways, understanding that what we go through as mothers and the whole entire experience of becoming a mother and then being a mother, that is your initiation. And as she was sharing here, where was it? Where in the midst of fertility struggles, eventually I delve deeper, where men undergo rituals to mark their transition into adulthood. But what struck me was how women through pregnancy and childbirth naturally undergo a transformative initiation. So, not to take away from men, but I am speaking to women here. We as women, and some of you can relate in the way of you have been there, done that, or you're going through it still, is that this initiation process that you go through as a mother after you give birth, that it can last a long time. And I feel like based on my understandings and my experience and what I have learned, is that more often than not, the reason why it feels so long is because there is some resistance to it. Resistance with leaning in to the lesson, leaning in to the pain, leaning in to the fear, leaning in to the discomforts. But what more often than not, especially the women that I work with, I see this actually all the time with all the women that I work with, they tend to find themselves self-sabotaging, procrastinating, avoiding, and in a fantasy land, fantasy world. And it's not a bad place, but this is where we can get lost in the sense of that we can lose the grip with reality. And the reality is that your soul is awakening, you're going through a lot, you're feeling a lot, and you running away from that and not diving into that is only going to prolong it. And it only is going to hurt more. And the more you put it off, the more it will hurt. And it's like that with anything. I'm sure you've had friends, or let's say you needed to make a call, and you just waited and waited and waited to make that call, and you put it off and put it off and put it off until I feel like making that call, and it's just that feeling seems to never come, or if it comes, it's at the most inconvenient times where you're doing something else that is much more fun than making that call, and eventually you just are forced to make that call. And when you're finally making that call, it feels like an exam. It feels like it's so scary and so painful that you're just going to die when the person picks up the phone. Versus the other times when you knew you needed to make a call and you took the initiative to do that when you recognized you needed to make the call, and you made the call right away, and you ripped the band-aid off, and you felt great for the next couple of days. Whereas versus you avoiding dealing with that pain, with that scary thing, what you're doing is you're taking that band-aid and you're slowly pulling it up with all the hairs, one by one, and you feel each and every hair as it's becoming detached from the band-aid. Versus you rip it and it just feels like, oh, that wasn't so bad. It stung for a second, versus stinging you for every tiny little hair that you're pulling off. So, that is all that I have for you guys for today. Hopefully this was a helpful story that helped you to see yourself and your initiation with spiritual awakening that motherhood has provided you with naturally. So I see that there's a couple of comments. Let me quickly take a peekaboo. Oh, Rebecca says shared on both pages. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Rebecca says breath work has been the most immediate and effective cure for my severe anxiety issues. I love that, and I love that you are understanding breath work and you're actually doing it. Another immediate relief, ice therapy, cold therapy. Take a bowl with water, preferably cold water, add ice to it, let it stand for a little bit so it's really cold. You can put your hands in it, or even better, you can put your face in it, or wash your face what I like to do is wash my face with warm water to open up the pores, get everything clean, get everything out, and then ice cold water. Not only is it good for your pores, but it calms you right down. The most powerful grounding technique. And if you have access to a cold tub, ice bath, and you can jump right in, you'll notice instant relief, and you feel almost like reborn after you come out from that ice bath. And then Rebecca says, I was diagnosed with acute anxiety disorder and was prescribed medication for anxiety. It didn't work, and I was prescribed even stronger psychiatric medication. It didn't work. Spending time in nature and deep breaths immediately relief and conform to my body. So I hear this actually very often. This is one of, I'm glad that I instantly said no to anxiety medication, and that my doctor at that point, he was, I would describe him as anti-meds. Take care of your internal body, watch what you eat, how you sleep, you exercise, breathing, all of those things. And eventually he changed, so we changed doctors as well. Where this is what I've been hearing is taking these medications has actually not been helpful, but in some cases it has been much more harmful, that it just heightened the anxiety, and anxiety turned into panic attacks, because it is not something external that you can take to fix. Anxiety is unhealed grief. You as a human, we all as humans, we go through a lot of experiences and a lot of traumas, and all different types of traumas, that when we don't deal with them, when we avoid dealing with them, it just accumulates and accumulates and accumulates, and it becomes our subconscious way of living and being, where we are not even aware consciously of where it's coming from. Because also anxiety, it's unhealed grief, and it is our way of, we feel anxious when we look into the future, right? But when we look into the future and we try to see who I will be as my future self, or how I'm going to live my life as a future self, and you might initially feel great about it, but anxiety starts to creep in because your subconscious stories and experiences of unhealed grief and losses that you have gone through are creeping up and telling you all the ways that you will fail, all the ways that it's not going to work out, all the ways that everything is going to turn to shit. And it's rarely the reality. It's rarely the reality. And that's why medication doesn't usually help with dealing with the actual root cause. Medication is the band-aid itself. And I've been on antidepressants as well, and I'll tell you, it was a band-aid itself. It's like me having an open wound, awaking spiritually. It's almost like, the way that I would describe it is like you have a really big cut and you have light coming through it. That's the awakening part. And medication, what it did is put a band-aid on it, so it made it really dull and didn't fully close it. Because in order for me to fully close it, I need to learn and understand that it's never going to close, and it's not meant to. It's meant to be open much more wider, because this is where who I am resides, and waiting to be awakened and live life on my terms, my way, as the most authentic version of myself, and stop playing all of these different roles for everyone else and making everybody else happy, when in the end I'm the one that's miserable. So these antidepressants weren't helping. The same thing with the anxiety meds, because it does not go into the root, and the root is where we are, where our true self is hiding and is waiting to be discovered. And the way to discover her is by going into the roots and cutting off all the roots that are not her, that are not you, and pruning, if you will. If you're a gardener, you'll know what I mean. Pruning the roots, pruning the branches, so that way the best parts of you, meaning who you truly are, stay, and you live in that way. And this is where freedom is. Freedom is you being yourself authentically and completely unapologetically, where you will find yourself saying no, no matter what it is, and not feeling bad, and not even explaining. Not even explaining why you're saying no, not standing up for your choices, but make the choice, say no, and that's it. And no energetic exchange happens there. It just is. Yes or no are not bad. They just are. Just like you see the sun and the moon, I'm sure you don't pick favorites and say, I prefer the sun or I prefer the moon. Maybe you do. If you are a beach body and you love the sun, you probably prefer doing that in the sun. But imagine bathing on the beach in the moonlight. You might actually love that as well. And so you might not have this interpretation of the sun and the moon as one is bad, one is good. You see them as they just are. The air that you're breathing, you're not judging it. Unless, someone broke wind around you and you're like, that doesn't smell so good. But it's not really the air that you're smelling, it's something else. Anyways, let me see what the next comment is. And then Rebecca says, daily in constant music and dancing and positive affirmation, most effective cure for depression. Yeah, because that's honestly one of the most powerful ways to ground and to release, especially if you're moving your midsection, where your root and sacral chakra are, where your authenticity is. And that's why for a woman, hip exercises and moving the hips, right, the center, the core, that is where you will release and you start to heal. Some women, including myself and the women that I worked with, one of the things that I got them to do was to do those kind of dance exercises where you're just moving your hips and dancing around. And one of the things that I noticed that they would share with me afterwards is how they would find themselves crying and not knowing why, but they're just crying and sobbing. Some of them would drop to the floor and cry and just release a lot, and then they get back up and they're dancing again, because the goal here is to continue dancing until you feel great and you feel empowered and you feel lighter. And that's very normal, because there's a lot of blockages that are there that need to be released, and the hip movements, they help to do that, right? Latin type of dancing helps. And there's many other ones. Feel free to share which ones are your favorite that have helped you, maybe, and maybe even how they helped you as well. Let me see. Debbie's on here. Hey Debbie, how are you doing? Rebecca says, thanks for the tip. You're welcome. What is it? There we go. Oh my goodness, it's not moving properly. That's why it feels so good to swim in a river. Yeah, releasing lots of things and giving things that no longer serve you to the river. Holistic, Debbie said, I had trapped energy and trauma. Medication wasn't going to make it disappear. Exactly. Medication, what it will do is it'll just continue to keep it trapped there, to put a lid on the boiling kettle, right? To close the kettle, and it's still gonna come through. It's still gonna be there, and until you go and you deal with those traumas and not necessarily uncover them all and sit with them and spend hours or days or weeks with focusing on each trauma, it's really just going, and this is depending on the expert that you are working with. Therapists, usually they will get you to spend quite a bit of time in each trauma, but a coach like myself, I won't, because the more you focus on those things, you're just tapping into that energy of the past, and you bring it into the now, and the more will start to show through in your life. And that's why usually with therapists, you can work with them for years, and with a coach, you can work with them for 3, 6 months, or a year, and you're good. You got it, right? You don't need any more hand holding or babysitting, or you know what to do, basically, because you get to experience it all firsthand. So therefore, I continue to feel as if I was in constant suffocation and body spasms, because it kept you in that state. I lived this way for years. Only alcohol and cannabis helped to relieve my internal pain, because they're escapes. The pills that the doctors give, they are numbing, and they're keeping everything trapped and within. But alcohol and cannabis, they are, and pills also, they're in a way an escape, but the difference between alcohol and cannabis, they're spirits, right? One is plant medicine and the other one is a spirit. So there's trapped spirit in it, and that's why alcohol is a depressant. It brings you down. And cannabis, it forces you to see your shadow, right? Your shadow self, your dark parts, and it brings things up for you. And so does alcohol, right? When it brings you down, you feel down, and in a way it brings things up. But cannabis is a lot more pronounced, and it brings things right in front of you. And this is where many people, they experience paranoia and feel paranoid, even with just a little bit. And that's because a lot of things are coming up and they're not sure what they are, and they come up as feelings and emotions from the past as the shadow, and it's almost like you feel shadows all around you of your previous versions of yourself, and you feel paranoid because of all of those shadows closing in on you. And Debbie says, I'm finally able to revisit my past without feeling all the pain and emotions. Amazing. Now you just revisit it as if like reading a story in the book or watching a movie, without that emotional charge that they once had, an emotional hold that they once had on you. And then Debbie says, I did belly dance classes for a while. It helped with feminine energy. Yeah. That's how women move. They move their hips all around, right? Men dance in a different way. So thank you, everybody, for being on here, especially Rebecca and Debbie, for engaging with me and sharing what has been coming up for you and your experiences, and being open and honest what you have been going through, what you have gone through, and what helped and what didn't help, for the time that it did help and the time it didn't help. It's very helpful for me to hear, and I'm sure for everyone else who will be watching on replay. And whether they're silent watchers or sharers, like the two of you ladies, they're gonna learn from what you're sharing as well. Rebecca says, oh, belly dance, I've always wanted to learn. There you go, belly dancing. That's a great one, actually. Belly dancing, Latin, like salsa, bachata. What else is there? There's so many different ones. It depends on also your dance styles. For me, that's usually been my way of dance for the most part. But yeah, anyways, that's it. Thank you to each and every one of you. And until we see each other perhaps tomorrow live on Heal the Unicorn podcast, where Bethany Briggs and I, we go live in our Facebook group called Heal the Unicorn, Emotional Healing and Spiritual Growth for Women. So make sure you set a reminder where we're going to be going live at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time-ish. Or next Tuesday for another story time. Hopefully I'll have enough time to find a story for you all from another beautiful woman who has openly shared what she has experienced through spiritual awakening. on her journey in a way that feels right and authentic to her. And until next time, bye everybody. Thanks.